One. Together with Ed Lesher, Dennis Bartos, and Gonzalo Garcia, I am honored to welcome you to Day 6 of the 2020 Agency One Annual, and we hope for this year only, virtual advisor conference. Thank you for joining us. For those of you who joined us over the past 2 weeks, we hope you found value from the speakers and the content that was shared. During this month, Agency One is hosting over 20 one-hour sessions on a variety of topics, including practice management, tax policy, the economy, estate planning with high net worth clients, sales opportunities, some that are general and others that highlight a specific product, charitable planning opportunities, how you can become a shareholder in an agent-owned reinsurance company, opportunities for wealth managers that are looking for a fee-based alternative to the more traditional life insurance sales process, and much, much more. We have featured nationally recognized speakers, including estate planning attorneys Ed Wren from Withers Bergman and David York from York Howell Guyman, New York Times bestselling authors and inspirational speakers Ben Nemtin, Tim Arnold from StoryBrand, and Kim Lear from Inlay Insights, economist Bob Bauer, chief global economist from Principal, and our very own Gonzalo Garcia, just to name a few. All of the sessions that have taken place so far have been recorded and can be accessed by you through the Attendee Hub. Hopefully, many of you that are joining us today have participated in the conference over the last 2 weeks. So I am going to abbreviate the history of Agency One and how we got to where we are today. For those of you that have heard this before, please indulge me. We have a lot of new advisors joining us as the upcoming session has generated a significant amount of interest. The principals of Agency One have been working together for more than 30 years, always in the life insurance brokerage space. We love what we do, and we love working with the advisors that are part of our Agency One 100 group. One of the tenets or basic value propositions that is central to our Agency One offering is providing educational content, networking opportunities, and idea sharing with our advisors. We hope we are succeeding in providing this to you in this virtual format. For those of you who have attended our conferences in the past, thank you for being with us today. For those of you who do not know us, we hope that this experience will give you some takeaways that will help you grow personally and professionally, and that it will expose you to the culture, capabilities, and professionalism of the Agency One organization and family. We have a terrific schedule for the remainder of today and hope you will be able to attend both sessions that we have today. The session that is going to start in about a minute and a half is our ever popular and frequently requested underwriting session with our very own Dennis Bartos and Jessica Caracofe, and a distinguished panel that Jessica is going to introduce. However, before I turn this over to Jessica, I need to take some time to introduce and brag about both Dennis and Jess. Dennis is one of the 4 partners at Agency One and oversees our underwriting department. In this capacity, he leads our underwriting department, whose purpose is to negotiate and advocate on behalf of the insured to obtain the best possible rating class for the purchase of new life insurance. He is a specialist in impaired risk life insurance negotiations and manages the underwriting process of some of the country's most complicated life insurance transactions. Dennis has over 30 years experience in this field, and frankly, we believe if he can't get it done, then it just cannot get done. Also on the panel and assisting Dennis every step of the way is our Vice President of Underwriting, Jessica Caracofe. Jess is our resident registered nurse, has been with Agency One since its inception, and is recognized as a knowledgeable and seasoned professional with a stellar industry reputation. Her primary role is to medically assess, position, and present each case to carriers based on desired product pricing and/or underwriting class. Her position frequently involves negotiating with carrier underwriters for the most favorable outcome. Jessica is also frequently asked by carrier home offices to consult on implementation of new underwriting programs. When faced with a complex medical situation, I often say that Jessica is like a dog with a bone, and that's a bit ironic considering she has a 100-pound chocolate lab. Once again, the entire meeting is being hosted through an attendee hub where you have access to the entire agenda, live streams, virtual meeting rooms, and a virtual exhibit hall for our insurance company partners. Now, just a couple housekeeping items. All attendees will be on mute. You can submit questions through the chat function in the attendee hub. The session is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be made available after the session. And please don't forget to complete the session survey after each session. Again, I would like to thank you all for being here, and now I'm going to turn this over to Jessica, who's going to introduce the rest of the panel and begin the session. Jess?
Thanks, Kathy. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. You are certainly in for a treat. We have two industry icons with us today that I think you're going to really enjoy hearing from. We'll start with Nicole. Nicole Myers rejoined Swiss Re at the end of January as a Senior Vice President and Underwriting Propositions Lead for the Americas. In this role, she works with carriers to find innovative custom solutions to a variety of industry problems. Prior to returning to Swiss Re, Nicole worked with MIB to launch their electronic health record initiative in the US market. Her background is in life insurance, but she spent the last several years focused on underwriting technology, new products, and application development and process improvement. She's a busy woman. She's currently enrolled in a master's program for behavioral economics. She's got a passion for fast German cars, loves cooking and music. Thanks, Nicole, for joining us.
Great to be here.
Jordan Carrera, another legend. He is the Vice President and Chief Underwriter for Lincoln Financial Group, where he is responsible for developing and innovating company underwriting philosophy and policy and procedure for all products, underwriting training and auditing, collaborating with product and actuarial areas on product and reinsurance underwriting matters. The Office of the Chief is also responsible for the automated underwriting transformation and contestable claims review. Jordan has been a featured speaker at many national and regional underwriting associations and customer meetings, including this one where he's joined us many times in the past and is very welcome back. So thanks for joining us, Jordan.
Thank you, Jess.
Okay. So let's get after it. Our industry has been working diligently to find ways to make the life insurance buying process more consumer friendly. Companies have been vetting and piloting numerous data resources in their efforts to develop less invasive processes. Electronic health records, medical claims data, some artificial intelligence may actually take the place of traditional age and amount requirements. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, the last 7 months required every single one of us on this webcast to adjust how we do business. Rapidly accelerating the use of technology was mandatory for you to continue selling life insurance, for carriers to deliver policies, and for every single tedious step in between. Each of these leaders before you brings a unique perspective, and we'll discuss how technology is already changing the underwriting process, provide a sneak peek on what the future holds, although spoiler alert, some of it's a little creepy, but most importantly, we're going to talk about how all of this is going to impact your role as an advisor. Okay, let's start with the changes. So when COVID hit the US, changes in underwriting happened at lightning speed. Restrictions were immediately placed on older ages, some medical impairments, foreign travel, and more. But the industry had to adapt so we could still get good business placed. So I'm going to kick the conversation off with kind of a high level from each of our panelists on the challenges and resulting changes they've encountered over the last 6 to 7 months. Nicole, why don't you get us started with the reinsurance perspective?
Yeah, thank you again for having me here. It's such a pleasure to be here. It's been a wild year, right? This has been a crazy year. From the reinsurance perspective, we have the most widely used insurance manual. And so we immediately said, okay, we have to be here for our carriers, our customers. We have to make sure that we help them keep doing business in whatever way that we can. Simultaneously, we need to get this research done, in this world of all of these unknowns so that we can provide the longer term guidance. And it was, the early days, it was a lot of sleepless nights. And I think, quite a bit of hustle trying to keep some of the programs running. Immediate shift, obviously, to the fluidless world to really try and drive those policies that could go faster on just data, right? How can we put what we can sell on rails and keep that as broad as possible so that we could keep transacting business and doing that across all of the carriers that we serve. And we'll talk a lot about that tech today. I think a lot of this stuff will solidify for us. But it has since gone in the other direction. We've started to see more business coming through, but that early clampdown was difficult. The early guidance was something that we took very seriously. And we also tried to not overreact, which, we knew we had to keep business flowing through. So.
Yeah. Jordan, you've had to make a lot of changes as well at Lincoln. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Who would have known we'd be in the position that we're in right now? But luckily, a couple of things were happening for us in particular at Lincoln. We had already had a lab-free program going on for up to $1 million up to age 60. And we also had an automated underwriting process, and that was a rules engine that can issue policies up to table 4 without an underwriter intervention. So we had that going for us. We also had remote going on. We're a company that has a large remote underwriting population. So shifting everybody to remote positions was very easy and seamless for us. So we didn't miss a beat in that respect, except for me. I was the only one that had initial problems working from home, but now I am a convert. I'm here and ready to do it. But for the COVID restrictions that we did, I give kudos to Swiss Re. Chris Bailing was on the phone to me right away saying, here's what we're going to be doing at Swiss Re. And luckily we had started to make some plans ourselves, and I told him what we were going to be doing. And he was in complete agreement, which was great. I mean, right off the bat, we had complete collaboration with our main reinsurer, Swiss Re. So we also had to figure and be surgical in our approach. And with the guidance of our Dr. Fauci, who is Dr. John Green, our medical director, we were able to be pretty surgical in our approach. We knew that the vast majority of problems were going to be in the older ages. So we took strict restrictions on accepting older age business. We had to stop it right away. Foreign travel, foreign national business was all halted right then and there. And that was what we had to report up to our senior management. And we monitored every day what was going on. And we also had to get in touch with all of our underwriters. I had countless Zoom meetings with all our entire underwriting staff, and that's 170 plus underwriters. Letting them know what's going on, letting them know that we're there to support them. We have to do things differently now. We're in a new age. And luckily, we're also seeing a lot of the things that we were piloting really come to fruition really fast for us. And we'll be talking about some of those programs very on. But our surgical approach really worked for us because we knew the vast majority of the problems, the claims, and the deaths were going to be in the older age marketplace. And unfortunately, that really has happened. I mean, the overwhelming majority of our COVID claims have been 70 plus years old, overwhelming majority. So we've taken some actions and we're monitoring the situation, but making sure the underwriters knew they had the authority and the ability to do whatever was necessary to get business through, be it accepting labs from other places, from APSs, whatever it took to do the mindset of do the right thing, but also do the right thing for the customer as well, company and customer.
Right. Well, you certainly aren't alone as a carrier that put restrictions on older ages and traveling. I can tell you that when all of this first hit, it was change after change. And when you have, 25 carriers that you're following, it's a lot to keep straight. With that, Dennis, why don't you, maybe we'll tell Nicole and Jordan what it was like for us and all the changes that we had to go through and how we helped our producers to adapt.
It was like having the rug pulled out from under you when COVID hit. But like Jordan said, prior to COVID, there were only a few carriers out there that were involved in accelerated programs, and a lot of companies were operating with pilot programs. But when COVID hit and the restrictions hit, the carriers had to adapt very quickly. More carriers adopted the accelerated underwriting programs. We started to see e-applications come in. Drop tickets are now available. Keeping current, as Jess said, keeping current with these carriers and the changes is a full-time job almost. And right now, as COVID seems to be waning a bit, the restrictions are loosening a bit, so they're constantly changing out there. What we keep our website up and operational and up to date. So my best advice would be to call us and help us to slot your particular client into the particular program that suits your client and the circumstances at hand. It's important for you as the agents to know the idiosyncrasies of these programs, because you need to know whether the customer is going to need fluids, they're going to need an exam, are they going to have a telephone interview, what's required of this particular program, so that you can properly prepare them. And we're going to talk about that a little later on in this session, okay? But everyone has to remember that the goals of the people that are on these screens today, we're aligned. Your goals are the same as the carriers here. We all want to put good business on the books as quickly and as easily as possible. And we have the tools to do that.
Yes,
Yeah, Dennis,
we do.
we're not out of the woods yet, by the way. We don't know the effects of the second wave that we know is starting to come and what effect it's going to have. But you're right, there's more changes to come.
Yes, there are. And we are seeing some carriers kind of ease some of the restrictions, at least more that are starting to be willing to look at the older ages, at least on an individual basis. Some are even considering foreign travel. That doesn't mean that won't flop again if a second wave hits, but at least we are seeing some of that, that change a little. Although the focus of this discussion isn't really COVID, I think it would be prudent for the producers that are listening in to know how to handle when their client says, I had COVID, I'm healed. Nicole, what is Swiss Re like? What are you guys recommending in terms of that kind of post-infection, I'm healed client?
Yeah, so to your point, things are starting to open up a little bit, right? We're starting to actually get some more ability to look at the older ages, to look at travel, things like that. And a lot of that is because we've learned so much so rapidly in the last several months, though we have miles to go before we understand the long-term implications. It's not all that different than other serious conditions. You want to, when you're talking to your clients, you want to ask yourself, was this individual hospitalized? What was the severity of their actual infection? How long did it last? We've seen the emergence of what's being called long COVID, an individual who has continuous symptoms that they're not going away, and they're still exhibiting those symptoms. Those are the types of things that you would want to ask about or talk about with your client. That's prudent in field underwriting, right? Are you still exhausted? Are you still experiencing these symptoms? Were you hospitalized? And obviously, what we've talked about here, older ages are being affected differently. Did they have pre-existing conditions, right? Are there existing heart conditions that they may have had? So, and those are the continued guidelines that we're putting out as well at the reinsurance level. And that's what you really want to think about when you're talking to your customers.
Yeah, Jordan, how about you? Did you guys put any specific guidelines in place for post-COVID infections?
Yeah, we do. And our Dr. Green has been such a wealth of information for us and giving us guidance and letting us know, you know, we don't know what we don't know at this point, but we do know that there's been a lot of COVID infections. We do know that there's been a lot of recovery with no problems at all. We know that there's been asymptomatic people who haven't had any problems whatsoever. So our guidance has been that for anyone that's had post-COVID or COVID exposure, we're okay underwriting, and we have issued policies, preferred and preferred plus, if they've been recovered for 30 days. The hospitalizations are a different story. And as Nicole pointed out, there's many complications that are coming from the COVID exposure that's been out there. Everything from myocarditis to lung problems to exhausting fatigue. So those are the ones that are going to be challenges for us as we go into it. But for those that have been hospitalized, we have a minimum 90-day waiting period.
Thanks, Jordan. Dennis, do you want to cover how the rest of the carriers kind of generally are looking at post-COVID cases?
Generally, I want to focus on what Jordan said, because his guideline there is pretty much the industry standard right now. If you've been home, if you've been exposed to COVID and you tested positive to COVID and you're asymptomatic now, if you're cured, if you will, after 30 days, you're insurable. And not only are you insurable, you're insurable at the preferred bands or the regular underwriting that you would normally undergo. Okay. Those people that went into the hospital come into two categories. Those that were hospitalized and not put on a ventilator, and those that were hospitalized and put on a ventilator. Obviously, the people that were hospitalized and sent home, they become into a group of, say, 90 days. And then you can insure that particular risk. The people that have been on ventilators, though, that's about a 6-month postpone. You don't really know what's going to happen after hospitalization with ventilators right now. We had a little Zoom cast on underwriting about a month ago, and we talked specifically about ventilators and the complications, neurological impairments that seem to linger after these situations. So underwriting is open for business right now on people that have been exposed and cured of COVID. We could probably even insure Mr. Trump right now, you know. So give him another 2 weeks and we'll get him preferred with a debit for weight, maybe. I don't know. Okay. But I want to touch on kind of a what I call a COVID side effect here. People have not gone to the doctors. Ever since February, you know, we've had virtual doctor visits that have cropped up here. People have not had their routine colonoscopies, their skin tests, the screening mammograms. I don't know where that's going to go in the future here, but it's important for both the families and the businesses that are involved here to realize that people have to get back on that schedule. They've got to have these screening tests. Otherwise, we're going to see a repercussion come from a Jordan Carrera or a Swiss Re that says, okay, you haven't done your screening test like you were supposed to. So instead of preferred plus, we're going to debit you down to just preferred, perhaps. Okay. Or maybe even a standard plus. Okay. What we have to do is encourage people to get back to the doctors and do their screening tests, because it could have implications, negative implications for their pricing. Okay.
That's true. And I would just add to that, if you're sitting across from a client and they say, oh, I tested positive for COVID, I recovered at home, I was like a little tired and I had a cough. The clock for most carriers seems to start at when the symptoms abated. So once that last symptom left the body, I'm back to normal. That's the date we're focused on. Most companies want to wait 30 days from that date. So it's not necessarily when you got that positive test. It's when you're fully recovered. Okay, before we move into technology, I just want to remind everybody that you can use the live Q&A portion at the bottom, I think, right of your screen to ask questions at any point. We'll cover all of those at the end. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again. Okay, so Nicole, in your prior role with MIB, we mentioned earlier, you worked to launch their EHR initiative. And at Swiss, you're charged with finding innovative custom solutions for all sorts of industry issues. So I can't think of a better person to kind of go over this next slew of information. And for the listeners out there, we're going to start with a lot of the technology that's already being used, kind of behind the scenes. Some of it you've been introduced to, some of this is going to be new to you. And then Nicole's going to move into some of the things they're following for potential future use.
Yeah.
So take it away.
Thank you. So this is actually kind of the perfect pivot, right? Because the one thing that we know COVID brought on our doorstep was the use of data to keep on underwriting, and to keep policies moving so that you can get your clients covered. So I may not go through this list, kind of each thing in detail, but we're definitely going to touch on everything here. The existing requirements or data that you're probably used to hearing about or using or thinking about, such as prescription data, right? We know that prescription has been around for quite a while. And that data also being included in, Millman's IREX rules. We're seeing the combination of prescription data and credit data coming together to form new and powerful tools under IREX, to give more holistic view on the client's kind of overall mortality risk. If we're looking kind of down the right-hand side of this list here, LexisNexis risk classifier, TransUnion True Risk. Again, these types of credit behavioral scores or financial behavioral scores to really round out what we're doing with the clinical data. There's quite a bit of thought right now around how do we take all of these data sources and use them together? How do we take credit and actually use it in combination with these clinical data sources, so to make those things even more powerful than just when they're standing on their own? ID verification in the MIB Sherlock are on the right-hand side of this list on the bottom. I mean, these are classic things that you're probably familiar with in one way or another, right? Is this person who they say they are? Have they committed some sort of fraud? We certainly hope not, but these are the types of checks that we do to see what's popping up. And it becomes more and more important when we are not face-to-face, right? So when we're transacting over the phone or through the screen, we might not be spending as much time with our clients in person. And these types of ID verifications and fraud checks can become very, very powerful, because we know that unfortunately there will be a subset of people who will try and take advantage of the situation that we're in. Though generally, I like to say people are good. If we go to the left-hand side of this particular list and hit probably the first three and the last one, so electronic health records, patient portal, lab picture, and claims data, those are the ones that have taken off like a rocket ship in terms of use this year. Electronic health records and patient portal, also refer to patient portal as PHR, so basically patient accessed health records. These are the types of records that we get when we ask a person to put their username and password into a particular portal, and then we would pull their health record back. Electronic health records, we typically think about this as authorized release. So they've signed some sort of HIPAA authorization or form for you, and we're going to pull that information direct from the aggregator to use it in underwriting. Lab pictures is a really interesting one, and that is clinical lab data. So we haven't been in a world where we've necessarily been able to complete paramedical exams and get labs like we used to. And the question is this a fluidless environment that we live in now, or can we find fluid results from somewhere else? And lab picture is being heavily tested and piloted and used in production as well, to see if it will answer the question for us. And then claims data, billing and claims data, super interesting set of data as well. Can you take all of these billing claims codes that are out there and really figure out a meaningful diagnosis from this person, get a real visual on this person's health history. And there is a sense of a patchwork quilt with these data sources right now. Carriers are often connecting into, I think right now the average is 5 different data sources. Particularly in 2020, what we're seeing is a sense of let's just get as much information as we can to be able to make this decision and hope that we find something. But the ideal state that we drive to, and what we're going to talk about in the next couple of slides, is a world where these data sources, which cover a wide variety of things, actually work in harmony with each other. And instead of being overwhelmed, we are actually able to really streamline the process and create a hyper-personalized world for your clients as they experience the application from the carrier. Shall we pop to the next slide? So this is a little bit of a visual around what I mean when I say hyper-personalized. You know, disclosure, the ability to answer underwriting questions, it's the great equalizer, right? We know that we can ask questions of our applicants, but we don't want to go back to a world where we've got a 22-page application and that process is taking hours and hours, right? We want to keep driving into a world where we're asking for what we need when we need it. And we believe that we can get there by combining all of these new data sources that we see and using them in really, really precise ways. So Swiss Re has started referring to this as precision ordering. And the idea is that I can have this picture of this applicant and I can very precisely pluck the data that I need in order to fill in the holes and then have them validate and verify the information that I need to move forward, creating both a shorter application process and one that's more custom tailored to them. And hopefully one that has, you know, nice, easy language with words that we can all pronounce and understand. And that, you know, the applicant's not struggling to get through. I mean, ideally, we want to create a customer experience that is memorable, but also easy to get through so we can get you covered, get your business on the books. So we're going to take a look in these next couple of slides at some of the new technology which has hit the market. So we talked about what we're using today, what we're piloting today. What we're going to talk about now is what underwriting could look like in the future. And this is super exciting stuff. It's a moonshot a bit, or it's a Mars shot, depending on who you talk to, how far out we're actually going to go. But this is real stuff that exists outside of our industry that we're looking at because we want to think about how we can leverage kind of the brilliant technology that's being developed in other areas and bring that into our workflow in the future. And this particular company has the ability to actually take blood pressure and vitals and even measure your stress through the screen. So we are sitting here today and talking, and as Jessica and I are chatting away, I can see what her O2 saturation is. I can see how fast she's breathing. I can tell if she is stressed out. That's all possible through the screen. This is actually an app that you can go out and download for your own personal use right now. When I say it's real, I mean it. It actually exists. And so how do we bring tools like this into our process? You know, we're transacting more and more through the screen. We know that our applicants have a cell phone in their pocket. So if we can start to collect vitals, your blood pressure, monitor your blood pressure through your screen, that can be particularly powerful for what we do. And this particular technology has, in my understanding, was FDA approved this year. So this is something that we will see in the telehealth space, right?
This stuff is really scary.
Wait for the next one. This is really, it's cool stuff. And you know, the oxygen saturation is really neat here, right? We're living in COVID times, and we think a lot about oxygen saturation and what's going on with this person on the other end of the screen. Can we actually see if they're in distress without being in the same room as them?
I'd like to see this in telehealth visits first.
Yeah.
That would be nice.
Yeah, and they do have a relationship with telehealth providers. What's super cool actually is that telehealth taken off like a rocket ship. We're going to talk about stock I wish I invested in January.
Uh-oh.
Suddenly things have been approved in, in mass. And so all of this thought about how can we plug in behind your screen, it's following right behind it, right? It's created a whole new industry of technology that plugs into telehealth platforms. Yeah, cool stuff.
Well, wait till you see this next one.
This next one, if you thought that had some creep factor to it, let's really creep this time. So iCarbonX,
buckle up.
another site I highly recommend you pop out to their site, watch their video, their pitch video. It's about 1.5 minutes long. Essentially what they are looking to do and what they are doing, based on your DNA and variables that input your health information that you would input, they create a digital doppelganger of you. And the idea here is that you would be able to essentially have a digital doppelganger that would help you make decisions about your health. So one of the things that we really struggle with as human beings, particularly in our culture, is seeing ourselves in 5 or 10 or 15 or 25 years from now. This is why we struggle to make good retirement decisions, right? Good decisions about our money. It's why, we stay out a little too late when we go to conferences, and, we don't always make the right decision. Because we really have a difficult time projecting ourselves into the future because we're living in the moment. So if I could have a digital twin, if I could have a digital doppelganger who was based on my own DNA, my own wellness metrics, my own decisions that I was making, and my vitals that are being collected through my wearable, my watch, and I could say, should I go for a run? Or should I watch 2 more episodes of whatever it is I'm streaming on Netflix or Hulu? What's the long-term impact of that? And actually see the results in my digital doppelganger. See what would happen if I consistently make those types of decisions.
Like how far ahead? How 5 years, 10 years, does it just?
That's what they're working on right now, right? Is how far out can we show you the impact of this behavior if it's chronic? And so can we show you, if you did this consistently for the next 5 years, what it would look like in 20 years from now? Would you change your behavior? Would you alter what you're doing if you understood how today's decisions impacted tomorrow? I think that they are partnered with a US partner who is essentially thinking about releasing this with their employee base, right? So thinking group health and wellness, you think you could definitely impact your health insurance rates, right, with a digital doppelganger. But, we are following this particular company and the idea of a digital twin closely because it can give us some really interesting insights into how we engage with customers, what their health looks like, their overall health picture, and what they might look like in the long run. What's it going to be like in 10 years from now? Because it's hard for us to picture that.
Interesting stuff. My digital doppelganger. My goodness. Thank you, Nicole.
This is fascinating stuff. Nicole, on your slides about credit integration, we're seeing a lot of regulatory pushback on using any sources of credit. As a matter of fact, there's regulatory concerns all over the place with genetic information, with this and that. And that's one of our biggest concerns. But you are right. All the things you had on that screen were stuff that we are either using right now or have looked at and considered looking at it. But it's funny, 2016, I told all of our underwriters that because we see the data revolution going on and how fast data is coming at us left and right, we said that the jobs that they were doing as underwriters back in 2016 were going to change completely within 5 years, by 2021. And it's already come to fruition already because of the COVID pandemic happening that's been going on, but also because the driving of data to us. And we have to be very careful with that data and how we use it and make sure that it's FCRA approved. But still, we're seeing the regulators coming at us fast and furious about the data sources that we're using and what sort of prejudice that might have against the client.
Yeah, there's a lot of caution in the credit space right now, a lot. And, it could change. We know it could all change basically in a moment, right? And it's important to just think about how you keep up with the automation and the things like that when you're adding those multiple data sources, and it gets complicated fast. We've found ourselves in a bit of a quagmire right now with all the data. So,
well, and from the field perspective, it's very difficult to explain to the producer, let alone the client, why this score caused, why you have to pay more money for your insurance because of a score, because of this voodoo mechanism happening behind the scene. I can't point to a lab value. I can't point to a build chart. It's not concrete. So I don't think anybody listening to this call is going to be too terribly upset if those scores find their way out the door. Yeah. All right. So let's kind of move into why all this matters. We just heard, like, not the digital doppelganger, but going back to some of that hard data, that hard, the labs or medical claims data. All of these things kind of serve as little puzzle pieces for the underwriters. They're trying to piece together the story of the client. This is where it's super important that either us as your broker or the client or the producer get all the context, like bring the color to tell the story. Otherwise, we're just looking at, black and white labs. So I'll give you an example. Part 2 comes into an underwriter. Everything's checked no, there's no meds. I'm healthy, I want preferred best. They pull the script check, and last month they see a steroid, an inhaler, and an antibiotic. Now there's a red flag. Now I at least have to come back and ask you questions, or I have to go get an APS. Or they're going, all right, so if they've lied about this, or they didn't disclose this, what else aren't they disclosing? It just kind of immediately sends up all those red flags. Now, maybe what could have just happened is I got the flu from my 5-year-old last month. It turned into kind of a bronchial thing. They knocked it out with an antibiotic, a steroid, add the inhaler just in case. If that story was on the part 2, matches up with that little magical puzzle piece coming behind the scenes, you're starting the case off on a completely different foot. So companies are not only using all this information before they underwrite, they're using it post-issue, particularly in those cases where an APS might not have been required. Accelerated underwriting, they have to do some things to kind of spot check for non-disclosure. And now more and more companies are moving towards third parties completing the part 2s, or even having the clients do the part 2s on their own. So it's super duper important that you as the producer educate the client that they need to fully disclose. They need to take their time and sit down and kind of think through what medications they've been on, what doctors they've seen, so that this process can go as smoothly as possible. So Jordan, I want to lend this one to you. Can you talk about how you're using some of the resources we just talked about, tech resources, to help protect the company from misrepresentation, and then maybe even kind of give a few examples of when you've had to rescind policies or contest a claim?
Sure. The game changer has already started, and the game changer is electronic health records, electronic medical records. That is a source that we can obtain really, really quickly for the most part. And we're in the infancy of it, but the hit rates and the amount of information that we're getting is improving every single day. So the game changer has started with that. The second biggest thing that we use and we utilize right now is the health claims data. And that tells us where you've been, what was ordered, why. Well, we have to figure out the why it was ordered, but we can see whether or not that information is going to allow us to go quickly through somebody's medical records and not have to do anything differently and not have to order anything else, or it shows us that we may have a problem. So those are the two big things that are being utilized right now by us. We are looking at the health claims records and saying to ourselves, I don't need to go for anything else. I can see everything's hunky-dory here, or I can see where there may be a problem. We also do post-issue RX searches to see if there's been something that might have been held back. I might have thought I'm having a problem with heart disease, but I'm going to hold off and get my insurance first and then go and see my doctor after that. But we are utilizing all these sources to help us. My team looks at all the contestable claims that come to us. My team does all the rescissions for the company. And the whole thing that we look for is material misrepresentation. Did you neglect to tell us something that would have been material to our underwriting decision whether or not to issue you at a certain class? And that comes into play with all this data that we're looking at. Lab picture is great for us. We've used it a couple of times, but our hit rate is pretty low with lab picture right now. We're expecting that to improve as things go along. But all of these things put together, part of our interview process now, you know, I always complain that I can do everything online. I can buy my car insurance online. I can do almost anything online except buy life insurance. And we finally got to the point where we're allowing, at Lincoln, we're allowing people to do their interview online on their computer right now. And part of the process of doing that is we have clarifying questions. If somebody neglects to tell us that they're diabetic, but in the background, we can see that they're on metformin, or we can see that they've gone to a doctor for some testing for that, or we see an RX for something. We have clarifying questions that say, I know you answered this as no, but we see from this source of information that you're on this medication or you've been to this doctor for this particular reason. Is there something that you neglected to tell us? And they're able to clarify themselves right then and there. So that aspect of not trusting is pretty much taken care of in that respect. But it is important for the producers to know that their clients do need to be upfront. What we see most as far as fraudulent statements are concerned are people forget their tobacco habits, and people forget how tall and how much they weigh. They tend to add a couple of inches to their height, and they tend to neglect to give us an accurate count. But we also have algorithms, and Nicole had a slide on one of them. We also have algorithms for smoke detection. It's whether or not the answers that you're giving us and the information that's running behind the algorithm is telling us whether or not you have a propensity to be a tobacco user. And if so, we're not going to allow you to go lab free. The same thing with our health model, whether or not you have a propensity to be overweight or maybe on a pre-diabetic situation going on with you. So those things are going on now. But when we do find that there's material misrepresentation, in the claim situation, it's the claim is not paid. In the rescission situation, we take back the policy, which means commissions are coming back as well. And you just want to avoid that. I mean, honesty is the best policy. People sometimes forget the little things. That's okay. Like the stuff that they used to forget, which was how many medications you're on. We can actually see that now. We know everything just about that's going on with the client. And I can point back to like 10 years ago when I was telling people when I was speaking that, we're getting so much information about people back then and even more now that I would say, use your credit card for all your good spending habits, like buying healthy stuff. And use cash when you go into the liquor store or wherever you're going. And don't take your phone with you either. Don't take your phone because your phone is tracking you. All of that stuff is going on now. Don't take a survey. Anything that's going on with that survey is data that's being collected about you. And fortunately for us, we get that data about your clients. And that's where we're seeing all these models come into play. So it's becoming more difficult for us not to get the information that we need, but we also want the clients to be certainly truthful in all their answers and telling us so.
It makes it easier though, right? I mean, you have the data on the back end. You're freely saying we have the data on the back end. When it's admitted and it's talked about and discussed and documented up front, it makes the underwriter's life easier. And the
Yeah.
agent and the client.
But we had a claim where the person was 40 years old, and during the course of our investigation, there was a next of kin statement that said, "Oh yeah, he had a heart stents put in 10 years ago," and on our tele app, none of that was admitted. It was all no as far as cardiac history was concerned. We got electronic health records. One of the health records that we got confirmed that there were 2 stents put in 2008. And we're also going for some more information, but it just goes to show you that here is a person who was issued coverage, neglected to tell us about a cardiac history. It was material to our underwriting decision, and now it's looking like this claim might not be paid. It's one of those situations where if they were just up front, it could have been dealt with easily, and there would be no worry at the back end as far as, during the 2-year contestable period, is the company going to pay or not? So those are some of the ramifications that can come from not being completely honest with your insurance application.
All right, so let's move on. I want to talk about how the role of the advisor is changing. Obviously, field underwriting and client education has never been more important. I would like to get each of your perspectives on how the producer can be most effective in the current and then future underwriting landscape. Who wants to take that one? Jordan, you want to start?
Well, sure. For all the producers out there, when I told the underwriters their job is going to be changing within 5 years, that really means your job is completely going to be changing, and we're seeing it right now in 5 years. Our e-submission and our e-delivery numbers are way, way, way up. I mean, e-delivery is 100% right now. E-submission is around 70%. We're looking to get it up to 90%. And I think you're finding that it's ways of changing, of doing business, different ways of doing business. Everyone before wanted to do it one way. There were the paper guys that said, I'm not going to do anything other than paper. Now they've changed their minds, and they're seeing how easy it is to do business. It's an interesting time that we're in. We're at a crossroads because of the data, because of the electronic health records, because of the medical claims billing data, because of the RX database searches. We're doing different things differently now. The old age and amount requirements chart that every company has out there is going to be a dinosaur pretty soon. We're going to tailor our needs to what we see from the databases that we're going to. So we'll say to Dennis, well, Dennis, I don't need anything from you because I've checked all my data sources and I see everything is great. No need for an exam, no need for an APS, no need for anything. So it's going to be a different world, and data, I think Nicole hit it on the head when she goes, it's going off like a rocket ship. And that's caused us, not a concern, but it's caused us the ability to be able to go out there and try to grasp what this data is coming at us is so fast at, and how are we going to utilize it, and what can we do to change things, because change is inevitable.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Nicole? What are your thoughts?
Not sure that I could summarize more eloquently than that. The ultimate goal, let me actually go back to this and just say the ultimate goal is to put more business on the books and better business on the books and do this right. I actually think that sometimes we talk about the addition of new data and we think that potentially less people are going to get written, or the more that we know, the less likely we'll want to make an offer on those individuals. So actually in this case, I kind of want to stress that a lot of this work that's being done, and even the changes, that advisors are going to experience as a result of it, it's really about placing more business. It's about writing more business. It's about having a more holistic view of the customer and their long-term health, so we can better assess where they should be in their policy, and so that we can actually get more people covered ultimately. Right. So I think that, that's the thing that I would want to convey here with trying to figure out how to use all of these data sources and bringing in all these new tools, It's about customer experience. It's about more coverage. It's about more business, and a better experience for really all of us as we engage in this.
I agree. So, all right, Dennis. So let's bring it back to brokerage. What are your thoughts on how the advisor's role is changing, and can you talk about some of the tools we have in place to help them with these transitions?
Well, let's try to bring it all together here. As the carriers are trying to make the process easier for the clients and the agents in the field, the agent is being disconnected from this process somewhat. You've got interviews that are taking place. You've got electronic applications. You've got electronic non-meds that are going out to clients. The agent is kind of disconnected from this, but that doesn't mean that the responsibilities end. You know, the agent has to be aware of what's going on, what's going to happen in that telephone interview. Is the person going to need examined? One of the hiccups that we see a lot is on the marijuana question, actually, where the client will not disclose to the agent that they're using marijuana recreationally, but it seems like the telephone interviews that the carriers have, they must have people on there that are friendlier and easier to talk to, and maybe the client wants to be more honest on the phone, and they don't want to tell this what they do, you know, after hours at home to their agent. Okay, that's one issue that we have, but the agent's responsibility is to make sure that the client tells the truth. Okay, we can handle the truth. What we can't handle is the non-disclosure. Okay, so if Jordan gets an application and he's electronically seeing that the client is smoking cigarettes or buying cigarettes or whatever codes are out there, and the client says, no, I'm not a smoker, that can be a material thing. If you've got nicotine in the urine on an insurance exam, it could be as simple as I smoked a cigar on the golf course. But if the agent doesn't ask the question properly, you know, we're not going to have that cue to go into Jordan and say, there's going to be nicotine in the urine because he smoked a cigar, you know, 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago or whatever it takes. You know, we've got the ability to handle these situations, but you've got to tell the truth so that they line up with all this data that's coming at you. Okay, we have access. Some of the other tools that we have up front in the brokerage area is the HAPI, the human API, the access to medical records, the electronic health records that Nicole was talking about. You know, we can download those instantly. We're finding great success in getting that. Like I was saying about the agents getting the truth out of the clients. If the clients tell you, my attending physician is Dr. Jones and my cardiologist is Dr. Smith, HIPAA regulations today limit us because we're asking for medical records from Dr. Jones and Dr. Smith. Well, what happens is Dr. Jones referred to Dr. whatever over here in left field, and if we didn't ask the institution that has the medical records for that doctor, we're not going to get those records. So we end up in the dark. The electronic records have given us a side effect in that regard. The electronic portals go into health systems so that, you know, for example, the University of Alabama health system, very familiar with that with an agent that's working in Birmingham. When I get medical records out of the electronic health record systems and the portals from the University of Alabama, I might have 6 physicians, and I've only got 1 disclosed on the exam, but I'm getting all the records out of the health portals. So I would encourage every agent to get the electronic portals opened for us so that we can get all that information up front. As we said, we did a webcast about a month ago on this issue. And what we said was the electronic health records that we get may not take us all the way down to the goal line, but it'll get us into the red zone very, very quickly. All right.
It is a pretty nice field underwriting tool. To Dennis's point, they don't always contain everything we need. But for those cases that might seem a little bit trickier, it's nice to get that information up front. I just want to touch on a couple other things. You know, with the telephone interviews happening by third parties, it's a much more extensive telephone interview when they're going to do the Part Bs. It's a lot to prepare your clients for. So we have updated a new tool. It's a worksheet called the Interview Prep Sheet. And it's just a space where your clients can collect information ahead of time, whether to, you know, trust information, trust dates, trust these numbers, Benny information, doctors, medications, just something where they can bring all that stuff together before they get on the phone or before they start their online part two. We also have an accompanying video that you're going to be able to share with your clients at the end of this week. Just like we have our tools on preparing for the insurance exam and preparing for the senior supplement, those videos are also up online. It's a quick share. You can get it from any of us at any point. We share them all the time. They're 2 to 3 minute videos that really just walk your clients through what to expect, what information to have ready, so that hopefully there's less frustration once it comes time to have those calls or get on and do those interviews. Well, that's all I have. Do we have any questions, Gonzalo?
Yes, hi there. Great
Hey.
job, guys. That was awesome. I have a few questions actually, and I've got like 4 screens in front of me, so bear with me a second. It all started with, oh my God, this is amazing, downloading app now. Thank you, when you were talking about Bina.ai.
Yeah, cool stuff.
Yeah.
We also had somebody that asked that they can't find the app. Is it actually an app on Droid or Apple, or is it something online?
Go to their website directly, and you can actually download through the website. It'll give you the links directly to it, because it might be under, the app itself might be under a brand name. So
got it.
Go directly to the website.
Tom, I believe you asked that question. So go to the Bina, BINAH.ai website, and you should be able to download it right there. Then I got a comment that said, no, that's not so much fun. This is no fun, when you were talking about the iCarbonX. So yeah, I think you're freaking some people out there.
So sometimes it's better not to know.
Yeah, we're going to get to some serious questions here in just a minute, but I'll finalize this with, how do I make sure I get completely off the grid so nobody ever finds me? This is terrifying.
Take your phone outside and smash it.
Yeah.
Or electronics in the house.
No Alexa, no technology.
Even our cars are connected today.
Yeah.
So.
No.
So let's get a little more serious. With these additional data sources and the fact that the carriers are going to be using these metrics to make underwriting decisions, will the data collected be made available to the client, and how does a client advocate or negotiate a change? So, and I think you know where that's coming from, right? Something was not entirely 100% correct, and a decision's been made from an underwriting standpoint. How can we, as a brokerage agency or the advisor for the client, really kind of drive, you know, how do you debate those, you know, if you don't feel it was entirely fair or justified?
Yeah, I can. So let me answer a little bit about technology, and then I would kick it over maybe to Jordan to get into the gritty details. We are looking at technology that creates kind of lockers for individuals so that they can actually have access to this information in advance. Jessica, you were talking about that worksheet that you have out there.
Mm-hmm.
We're thinking about, there are companies that offer that type of technology that we might be able to bring it into this space where people will have a sense of their records in advance. And so they have a preview of this information. So that doesn't answer that question directly, but I kind of wanted to hit it from the tech space because it's something that we would be thinking about to make available in the future to ease some of this stuff before it happens.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, for us.
For that, yeah.
Yeah, for us, everything that we use has to be FCRA compliant, Fair Credit Reporting Act compliant, which means it has to be verifiable, it has to be explainable. And whenever we make a decision using information like that, we send a letter and we say, here's the source that we obtain the information from, and here's how you can go and correct it if it is not correct. But for us, it has to be FCRA approved. And we haven't used credit data because of that. And even though it is FCRA approved and some of it has proven mortality implications to it, again, it was because of the regulatory problems that we're seeing right now and anticipating to come into the future that we've decided to stay away from that aspect of it. But all other data is FCRA approved.
Right. So that's really no different than if something shows up on your credit report and you need to contest it. There's a process by where you can go through that.
Correct.
Yeah. Got it. Okay, another question here is how are the results of DNA testing services like 23andMe affecting underwriting results? You want to talk about DNA testing?
No.
No. You got to give us something here.
Again, there are regulatory things going on right now where they do not want insurance companies, not necessarily life insurance companies, but definitely health insurance companies. They don't want them to have any access to DNA results whatsoever. But in some respects, having access to DNA results can be beneficial for us. And we don't order any DNA results. We would maybe see them in a doctor's note record somewhere. But the BRCA gene is a good example of where it can be beneficial for us in the underwriting process. But we don't look at anything else. And we're anticipating that the regulators are going to ban us from using any genetic information material in our underwriting process.
I can chime in a little bit on that, just in what I've seen in underwriting when, because you do have clients that tell their doctors everything. They give them their 23andMe and it's a part of the APS now. I've had underwriters come back and just ask for more information, meaning maybe they had this certain gene that puts them at a higher propensity for coronary artery disease. They've come back and asked me to see if they have a cardiologist or if they've had any kind of cardiac workup. So it's not like the gene necessarily they're focused on, it's the medical impairment that is associated with that gene. Have we done anything about that? Other than that, the only thing I've seen action taken on is the breast cancer genes, which has long been in the underwriting manuals. That's not a surprise.
Great, thank you, folks. So here's an interesting one. What sort of security advancements are being implemented to protect these new sources of data? It seems an agent's future role will be less asking the medical questions, but more easing the applicant's concerns regarding third-party data collection. How do you tackle that one?
That's a good question.
Yeah, it's a great question.
Go ahead.
This is a very good one. The new sources of medical data that we are tapping into, there is a certification in the medical and the health space, which is high trust. And so when the data sources are connecting in to our instances, there are layers upon layers of security that are tested and verified and put into place. I think a data breach has always been a waking nightmare for any of our organizations, and the companies that we are now transacting with to get this data, they know that better than anyone, right? That is a huge fear. I actually very recently had my data breached from a provider that I went to, and it's a really uncomfortable, horrible situation, right? To know that somebody has access to your medical records. So I will speak at the reinsurance level whenever we are at part of these engagements that the utmost care and attention is paid to security. And we have seen deals between data providers actually not go forward because the teams did not feel that the data was secure enough and could not be kept secure enough. So it is a blocker, I should say. It can become a blocker if the data sources are not secure. So tons of attention in that space. Yeah.
Dennis or Jordan, you got anything to add to that?
The amount of level of detail that you have to go through. For us to get a new vendor on, it's 6 months to a year going through all the data security that has to be done. My son is a cyber security person at another insurance company, and all the attacks on insurance companies, you wouldn't believe what they're doing every single day. But security is of the utmost importance.
Got it. Thank you for that.
Let me say something here, Gonzalo.
Yeah, Dan.
The informal inquiry that Agency One uses has a lot of sensitive data on it, and agents are they send them to us attached to emails all the time. That's not a secure transmission, guys. Okay, all you have to do is pick up the phone and call us. We will send you an encrypted secure email, and you can attach any document to it that you want, and it'll come back to us in a secure and encrypted way. We handle security very strictly here at Agency One.
Thank you for that advice, Dennis. That's very important. And the last question, if anybody needs to ask a question, we certainly have a little bit more time here. We're kind of over by 10 minutes, but we'll keep going if there are questions. I have one last one, and maybe Nicole, this is for you on the Bina.ai website again. Is disclosure required prior to someone using it?
Meaning, is there personal information or demographics required prior to using the technology?
I would imagine that's the spirit of the question. Like, is it disclosed that it will be used?
Oh, okay. I understand. I think I understand the question. Yeah, no, we would never build a process that wasn't transparent. That's with all of this. We would want the person to understand what's actually happening. So when we think about bringing technology in like this, we would potentially have, like the ribbon that goes around the screen and ask them to actually look into the screen. We would not want to be capturing data points without permission or knowledge. That's creep. I mean, that's like high creep factor, right?
Yeah.
And I think the stats have, 95, 98% of people, if they believe they're working with a company that's fully transparent, are more likely to buy a product from you, right? So we do everything in the spirit of transparency. Yeah.
Got it. And as a follow-up to that, there was another question. And where did it go? Are the security regulations, I'm going off of memory, are the security regulations for this the same as used for the for financial institutions? So and I guess the insurance companies are kind of regulated by similar financial institution regulations for security and so on, but relative to some of the vendors and so on, I think that's the spirit of the question.
So I can't really speak to what the financial institution security standards are. In this case, with this data, I can only speak to healthcare, and that we would follow the highest standard of what it takes in the healthcare world to transact. I would imagine with, as sensitive as financial data is, that they would be pretty comparable to each other.
Yeah, I would imagine so. I have no more questions, and we are about 13 minutes over our allotted hour. Kathy, you want to put a wrap on this?
I'd be happy to. Guys, thank you so much. This was terrific, and I am sure that folks are going to be coming back and looking at this on the attendee hub because it was recorded. So thank you to everyone. A couple of housekeeping items. Please remember to fill out your surveys. They will be emailed to you sometime later this afternoon. Also, later today at 3 o'clock, we have a bonus session with Ed Wren. Ed is going to provide an executive summary of his session from last week, opportunities for wealth planning in the face of proposed Democratic tax policies, and also answer any specific questions you might have. This session is designed just for you to address these questions because unfortunately, we didn't have an opportunity to ask Ed any questions last week. I spoke with Ed about an hour ago and he's very excited to be joining us again. So I hope everybody is going to tune in. If you have not had an opportunity to watch Ed's session from last week, please log into the attendee hub to do so. And also, if you would like a copy of the slides that Ed references in his presentation, please send me or Gonzalo or Lisa an email, and we will be happy to forward them to you very quickly. Once again, thank you for your participation, and please reach out to Agency One if we can be of any assistance. Thank you again to our wonderful panelists. This has been a terrific underwriting session, and I hope everyone has a terrific afternoon. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Agency One.